I met Alyssa 12 years ago when I was 23 and working two jobs to pay off my mother's medical debt after she passed. Her family, the Harrington side, as they love to remind everyone, came from old money in Connecticut. Beatrice, her mother, owned three properties outright. Franklin, her brother, never worked a real job but somehow always had opinions about everyone else's career. Sienna, her sister, married a dentist and acted like she discovered penicillin. When I proposed to Alyssa, I used my grandmother's ring because I literally could not afford anything else. Beatrice made a comment at our engagement dinner about how some families pass down heirlooms and others pass down debt. Franklin laughed so hard he choked on his wine. I sat there and smiled because I loved Alyssa and believed she was different from them. Over 10 years of marriage, I built a logistics consulting firm from nothing. Started in our spare bedroom, grew it to 47 employees, bought our first house, then our second one as a rental property. My grandmother left me her house in Vermont when she passed 4 years ago. I kept every receipt, documented every investment, put most assets in trust my accountant recommended years ago for tax purposes. Not because I suspected anything, just because I learned early that protecting what you build matters. Her family never acknowledged any of it. Every holiday, Franklin still brought up how I used to drive a beater truck. Beatrice still introduced me as the boy Alyssa met at community college, emphasis on community. I tolerated it because Alyssa asked me to keep the peace. This. This right here is the difference between people who build and people who inherit. Our guy went from spare bedroom to 47 employees, and Franklin's still making jokes about a truck from 2012? Franklin, my guy, your greatest flex is that you exited the correct birth canal. Sit down. But I want everyone watching to catch something important here. He kept receipts. He set up trusts. He documented everything. Not because he suspected his wife, but because when you grow up with nothing, you learn that the world will absolutely try to take whatever you manage to build. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. Meanwhile, Alyssa's out here asking him to keep the peace while her family roasts him annually like a Thanksgiving turkey. Keeping the peace means you absorb every hit so they stay comfortable. That's not peace. That's a hostage situation with appetizers. 3 Saturdays ago, we hosted the annual Harrington reunion at our main house. 37 people, catered food, the whole production. Around 4 in the afternoon, I went to the garage to grab more wine from the storage rack. The side door connects to the backyard through a small mudroom, and the window was cracked open because Sienna had been smoking out there earlier. I heard Franklin first. "Still cannot believe you wasted 10 years on this broke loser," he was saying. "Remember when he could not even afford your engagement ring? Pathetic." Then Alyssa laughed, and that laugh is something I will never forget. This casual, dismissive sound, like Franklin just told a mildly funny joke. "Trust me," she said, "I am done. My lawyer says with the claims I am filing, I will get everything. His business, both houses, even his inheritance from grandma, plus alimony for life." Beatrice chimed in next. "Good. Drain him dry. Make him pay for wasting your youth." Then Sienna added her piece about emptying accounts before I knew and changing locks while I was at work on Monday. I stood there holding 2 bottles of wine and listened to my wife and her entire family discuss how they were going to destroy me like I was a problem to be solved. Alyssa mentioned that her lawyer, someone named Clayton, who handled Sienna's friend's divorce, already had paperwork drafted. She just needed to file it at the right moment, preferably after she moved some money around. I need everyone to pause and really sit with this scene for a second. This man is standing in his garage, at his house, holding wine he paid for, listening to a family reunion he catered, while 4 people discuss carving up his life like a rotisserie chicken. And they're doing it casually, like they're planning a brunch. Drain him dry. Beatrice. That's not advice, that's a villain monologue. You're supposed to whisper that into a mirror in Act 2, not say it out loud at a garden party. And Alyssa's laugh, man. You know what that laugh tells you? She never loved him. You don't laugh about destroying someone you loved. You might leave them, divorce them, even hate them, but you don't giggle about it with your mom. That's someone revealing they were performing for 10 years. Every "I love you," every hand squeeze, every holiday where she defended him, allegedly, all of it was just waiting for the payday to mature. This is why I always say, pay attention to how someone talks about their exes, because that's exactly how they'll talk about you one day. Here is what none of them knew. I had been suspicious for about 8 months. Little things. Alyssa suddenly interested in our account passwords. Questions about the rental property deed. A browser history she forgot to clear showing searches for high-asset divorce attorneys. I never confronted her. Instead, I watched, I waited, and I prepared. I walked back into that reunion with a smile and 2 bottles of wine, hosted the rest of the evening perfectly, even gave a toast to family and how blessed I was to have married into such a wonderful one. Alyssa squeezed my hand and told everyone how lucky she was too. What she did not know is that I had already spent those 8 months making moves, and by the time she figured out what happened, it would be far too late. The reunion ended. Everyone hugged, said their goodbyes. I cleaned up the backyard while Alyssa went to bed early, claiming a headache, and I started making phone calls. Part 2 coming soon. Trust me, you want to hear what happened next. Update 1. Alright, so a lot of you asked what happened after the reunion. Buckle up because the week that followed was something else entirely. The Monday after, I met with my accountant, Angus, first thing in the morning. We had coffee at his office downtown, and I explained the situation without going into every detail. Just told him I needed to understand exactly what was protected and what was not. Angus had been handling my finances since year 3 of the business, and he knew the structure better than anyone. He confirmed what I already suspected. The trusts I set up years ago for the business assets and the Vermont property were solid. Alyssa's name was not on them because they were established before she started showing interest in our finances. But here is where it got complicated. Our primary residence, the one we hosted the reunion at, was jointly owned. The rental property was in both names too because we bought it together 5 years ago as an investment. Angus told me that in a divorce, those would be subject to division regardless of who paid for them. I paid for both entirely with business income, but that did not matter legally, so I made a decision. I was not going to wait for Alyssa to make her move. That Wednesday, I had a conversation with Alyssa about refinancing the rental property. Told her interest rates were favorable and we should pull some equity out for renovations. She agreed immediately, almost too eagerly, and I realized she probably thought this would give her access to more liquid cash before she filed. What she did not know was that the refinancing paperwork I had drawn up included a clause transferring the property into a new LLC that I controlled. She signed without reading the details because she trusted that I was still the clueless husband she thought I was. Oh, we are in the strategy phase now, and I am seated. You know what I love about this? He's not being petty. He's not slashing tires or sending screenshots to everyone she knows. He's playing chess. And Alyssa's out here playing checkers with the pieces taped to her forehead. She signed paperwork without reading it because she was so confident in her own scheme that she forgot to check for a counter scheme. That's the thing about people who've never actually struggled for anything. They think they're clever because nobody's ever tested them. She's been planning this divorce for months with her whole family and a lawyer, and she still got outmaneuvered because she fundamentally underestimated a man she'd been mocking for a decade. You want to know the real irony? She agreed too eagerly because she thought she was scamming him. She was so excited about her own heist that she walked directly into his. Guys, write this down. Overconfidence is the only undefeated champion in this world. Thursday evening, Franklin showed up at our house unannounced. Said he was in the area and wanted to check in on his sister. He spent 2 hours asking me questions about the business, how much it was worth, whether I had considered selling. I played along, told him I was thinking about retirement in a few years, maybe selling to a competitor. He practically salivated. I could see him calculating his sister's potential payout in real time. Then something unexpected happened. Alyssa confronted me Friday night about why I moved money from our joint savings into an operating account for the business. She found the transfer notification on her banking app. I told her it was for payroll because we had a large contract coming in and needed liquidity. She accepted the explanation, but I saw something shift in her expression. Suspicion. She was starting to wonder if I knew more than I let on. Saturday morning, Beatrice called the house and asked to speak with me directly. That had never happened before in 10 years. She wanted to know if everything was all right between me and Alyssa. Said her daughter seemed stressed lately. I told Beatrice everything was wonderful and thanked her for her concern. She hung up without saying goodbye. They were circling now, and what none of them realized was that I had already made 3 moves they would not discover until it was far too late. More coming. The confrontation is about to get real. Franklin showing up to do reconnaissance is absolutely sending me. This man really rolled up to a house he doesn't own, that he's never contributed to, asked how much the business was worth like he was shopping for a used car, and then went home to report to mommy. Bro is a 40-something-year-old man functioning as a scout for his sister's divorce heist. That's his role in this family. That's his purpose. And he's doing it badly. He might as well have shown up with a clipboard labeled Divorce Intel. But you know what's actually fascinating here? Beatrice calling directly. 10 years of marriage, never once picked up the phone for this man, and suddenly she's checking in because her daughter seems stressed. She's not calling because she cares. She's calling because the spidey senses are tingling, and she needs to know if the mark figured out the con. These people really thought they were the smartest ones in the room because they had money once. Newsflash, having money and knowing how to get money are two very different skill sets. Update 2. So the confrontation finally happened, and it did not go the way any of them expected. Tuesday evening, I came home from work and found Alyssa, Franklin, and Beatrice all sitting in our living room. No warning, no text that they were coming over. Just the three of them waiting for me like some kind of intervention committee. Alyssa started by saying we needed to talk about some concerning things she had noticed. The money transfers, the refinancing paperwork she apparently went back and actually read after signing. Franklin jumped in immediately, demanding to know why the rental property was now in an LLC with only my name on the operating agreement. He kept asking who put me up to this, like I could not possibly be smart enough to protect my own assets. I sat down across from them and asked Alyssa directly if there was something she wanted to tell me. She looked at her mother, then at Franklin, and said she did not know what I was talking about. So I told her I knew about Clayton. I knew about the divorce filing she had drafted. I knew about the plan to take everything while I was at work on Monday 3 weeks ago. 3 people sitting in his living room like a tribunal, ready to interrogate a man in his own house about protecting his own assets from their scheme. The audacity is almost impressive. It's like a burglar calling the cops because you changed your locks. And Franklin, asking who put you up to this, might be the most revealing thing anyone said in this entire story. He literally cannot conceive of a world where this man is intelligent enough to outmaneuver them. In Franklin's brain, there must be another rich person behind this because the community college boy couldn't possibly have done it alone. That's 10 years of classism coming home to roost. They spent a decade calling him stupid, broke, and beneath them, and now they're genuinely confused that he's not. Meanwhile, Alyssa looked at her mom and brother before answering whether she had something to tell her husband. She checked with her team before responding. If you ever needed confirmation that this marriage was never real, there it is. She doesn't have a husband. She has a mark and 2 handlers. The room went quiet. Then Beatrice started talking about how I had obviously been manipulating Alyssa for years, isolating her from her family, controlling the finances. She said Alyssa deserved to protect herself from someone like me. Franklin backed her up, said I had always resented them for having more than me, that this was about my insecurity, not anything they did wrong. I asked Alyssa again. 10 years of marriage, and she could not even look me in the face and admit what she was planning. She finally spoke up and said I had never really been part of her world, that her family tried to welcome me, but I always had a chip on my shoulder. She said the marriage had been dying for years, and she was just trying to secure her future. Then Franklin made a mistake. He mentioned that Beatrice had already talked to a realtor about listing our primary residence once the divorce was finalized. They had a buyer lined up from Beatrice's country club. They were dividing up a house I still owned while sitting in my living room. What they did not know was that I had already filed for divorce myself that Monday morning. My attorney served Alyssa the papers at her office Wednesday afternoon while she was at work. Her lawyer Clayton called her screaming about how we had filed first and now their entire strategy was compromised. By Thursday, Sienna discovered that the rental property transfer was legally binding, and there was nothing they could do to reverse it. Franklin tried to threaten me with lawyers, but Angus had structured everything properly. But here is where it got worse for them. Beatrice's country club buyer backed out when they learned the house was now tied up in contested divorce proceedings. And I discovered something about Franklin that changed everything. More coming. This is about to get much uglier. They had a buyer lined up. They were literally shopping his house to country club members while sitting on his couch. The house isn't even divorced yet, and Beatrice is already collecting deposits from her golf friends. This family runs on pure, uncut delusion. But here's the beautiful part. While they were all sitting there rehearsing their "you're the villain" speech, the divorce papers were already being printed. He filed first. In divorce, filing first isn't just symbolic. It sets the tempo. It means they're now responding to his case instead of running theirs. Clayton the lawyer is out there screaming because his whole clean him out playbook just became useless. And Alyssa's sitting there saying he was never part of her world? Ma'am, your world is apparently running out of money, your brother owes you 80 grand, and your mom is selling off properties. Your world is a Potemkin village held together with denial and old photo albums. The man built an actual world. You just wanted to live in it long enough to own it. Final update. Alright, this is the last update because honestly I need to move on with my life, but you all deserve to know how this ended. So remember I mentioned discovering something about Franklin. During the divorce discovery process, my attorney requested financial disclosures from Alyssa. Turns out Franklin had been borrowing money from Alyssa for years. Not small amounts either. He owed her over $80,000. money she took from our joint accounts without telling me. When I confronted Alyssa about this, she finally admitted the truth. Franklin was broke. The family money was mostly gone. Beatrice had been selling off her properties one by one to maintain appearances. The only liquid wealth in the Harrington family was whatever they could extract from me. That is why they hated me from the beginning. Not because I was poor, because I was supposed to stay poor. I was supposed to be grateful and controllable. Instead, I built something and they resented every dollar I made because it exposed their decline. And there it is, folks. There's the whole story right there. The Harringtons weren't old money. They were old money. Past tense, spent, gone. They were running a decade-long con using their daughter as bait. Every insult about his truck, every community college jab, every holiday where they made him feel small. That wasn't arrogance. That was desperation, disguised as superiority. They needed him to feel inferior, so he'd never question why an old money family seemed so interested in his business growth. So he'd never notice $80,000 walking out the door to prop up Franklin's fake lifestyle. This is the thing about generational wealth. People don't talk about. It usually doesn't last. 3 generations, statistically. First generation makes it. Second generation maintains it. Third generation blows it, trying to look like the first. The Harringtons were Generation 3, pretending to be Generation 1. And they needed fresh blood to fund the illusion. He wasn't the poor outsider marrying up. He was the rescue mission they married down for. The divorce settlement came through faster than expected. Because I filed first and Alyssa's financial disclosures revealed the money she funneled to Franklin without my knowledge, the judge was not sympathetic to her claims. The business stayed entirely mine since it was in the trust. The Vermont property stayed mine. The rental property was already in my LLC. The primary residence got split, but because I could prove I paid for it entirely with documented business income while Alyssa contributed nothing financially, I received 70% equity. Alyssa ended up with about $40,000 total after attorney fees. Her lawyer, Clayton, dropped her case halfway through when he realized there was nothing left to claim. Then, the messages started. 97 texts in 1 week, 33 missed calls. Alyssa begging me to reconsider, saying her family pressured her into everything. Franklin demanding to know what I did, how I moved assets so fast, threatening lawyers he could not afford. Beatrice crying on voicemails about how I destroyed her daughter's life. Sienna's husband reached out through LinkedIn, asking if we could talk privately. I did not respond. 97 texts, 33 calls. After 10 years of mockery, 10 years of broke loser, 10 years of treating him like staff at a party he was paying for, now she wants to talk. And what's the play? My family pressured me. Classic. Takes zero accountability. Positions herself as a victim, and low-key asks him to save her from the consequences of her own plan. No, Alyssa, you laughed. I know you want everyone to forget that part, but you laughed when Franklin called him pathetic. You weren't pressured into that laugh. That was real, that was you. And Clayton dropping the case? Lawyers don't quit because they're morally opposed. They quit because there's no money left. When your divorce attorney ghosts you, that's the legal equivalent of your drug dealer staging an intervention. But the cherry on top? Sienna's husband sliding into LinkedIn DMs. My guy saw the family collapse in real time and immediately started looking for the exit. Smart man. Only smart one in that whole bloodline, apparently. The best message came from Alyssa herself. She wrote that she never meant any of it, that she loved me, that her family poisoned her against me for years, and she finally saw the truth. She wanted to know if there was any chance we could try again. I read it twice. Then, I blocked her number. Franklin tried showing up at my office last week. Security turned him away. Beatrice sent a letter through her attorney requesting a meeting to discuss family matters. My attorney responded that there were no family matters to discuss. I am writing this from the Vermont house my grandmother left me. The same grandmother whose ring I used to propose because I could not afford anything else. The same ring Beatrice mocked at our engagement dinner 12 years ago. They thought I was the broke loser who would never amount to anything. They spent 10 years treating me like an outsider while planning to take everything I built. And now they have nothing. And I have everything. And I am finally free. To everyone who followed this, thanks for listening. Sometimes the best revenge is just being prepared.